101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Living, Learning, Loving, no other than Miss Gail Showalter. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Gail, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Hi, I'm Gail Showalter, and I live in Southeast Texas, where I'm known as the old bird with feathers of wisdom for women and a very soft spot for single moms. I love to share, and I hope I can share with some writers today about some really encouraging tips I have for them.
Well, Miss Gail Showalter, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. And what does the title mean to you personally?
Well, the title is Living, Learning, Loving Insights and Encouragement for Single Moms, or Paths on the Path of Motherhood. Um, the chapters are broken up into living certain things, learning certain things, and then learning to love certain things. So those are the main themes of the book. And every chapter has a story, a personal experience story that I've experienced that taught me something or is motivating to other women, especially, but not just women. I've had some men comment on the book as well. And I think that my experiences over 70 years has taught me lots of things, and I like to share. And that's one of the things that I basically do. I have a passion for sharing. I have a passion for teaching, and so I do those things in this book.
So, Miss Gail, did writing this book feel like a reflection of your own motherhood journey?
It was more than that. It was a reflection for sure, but it was also some painful lessons, some difficult times, and what that did and what I did with those times. And so, what happened for me was when I was going through the tough days, I read a lot and I identified with a lot of different authors. And I realized that I could write those stories, I could share those things. And so I began to write smaller articles, and I was fortunate at a conference, and I encourage writers to go to these good conferences. But I was at this conference in New Mexico, and I listened to a woman talk, and she said, if you want a lot of readers, if you really have something to share, and most writers feel like they do, uh, you you need to start by writing articles, not necessarily books. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to write a book. Well, if you write articles, they say more people actually read what you've written than if you write a book. So I wrote articles, and I began to get published in different places, and I found that after many years, those articles could be compiled into this book. And so that is kind of what the book is. It's a compilation. It's not just a book that I decided to sit down and write. It took years. It took years in the making and the evolution of these experiences. And then I also taught and I coached single moms. So I realized what they really needed. And I took those needs into consideration when I wrote. And I have heard back from many of them. When the book was first published, I self published it. That was in 2015. And since then, it's been picked up by Morgan James Publishing and will come out soon. So I'm excited about that. But I encourage people who have a passion for anything to write about that particular thing. They always teach us write about what you know, not about what you think people ought to know or ought to hear, but what do you have experienced that you can share with others so that they can benefit from what you have to say.
Beautifully articulated, Miss Gail. Very well said. How do you balance honesty and encouragement when sharing the ups and downs of parenting?
Say that. I'm sorry. What?
How do you balance
How do
honesty
you
and
balance?
encouragement? Yes.
Mhm. I think balance is a key word for all of us, but especially moms, single moms. You know, there's over 10 million single moms in the United States, and balancing life, period, in this day and age is a huge effort. So, what I did was I simply wrote whenever I could. Now, I know great authors, very famous authors, will say, get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, write for an hour, do this methodically and religiously and don't stop and always have a routine. I didn't do that. I couldn't do that. I didn't have the time to do that. So most of the time I would write whenever I could, whenever I was alone, which wasn't always very often, but I would take that opportunity to write down thoughts. Now, a lot of us, and I know that they've heard this before, but if you have a thought when you're going to sleep or right when you first wake up, you need to have something there to write it down because don't trust that you're going to remember it. You would think, oh, yeah, I'll remember that tomorrow, but sometimes you don't. So it's a good thing anywhere you are to have something to jot things down on. It doesn't even have to be a fancy journal, it can just be a little tablet of some sort, but always be able to write a thought down. Like I had a thought the other day, I'm writing a memoir. I had a thought, I wrote it down on a scrap piece of paper. At least it's written down somewhere and I won't
Yes.
forget that.
Miss Gail, let's talk about the motherhood as a journey. How has a motherhood changed you emotionally, mentally, or even spiritually?
Hmm. I think it has to be pretty dramatic to make a person change. It has to be something very unforgettable. And so I take those unforgettable things and make stories or create an article out of them. I have written for newspapers, so I write editorials. Those are
Yes.
thoughts, but that's just one avenue, and it is a good avenue, even though newspapers are kind of losing their grip on us. You can also write for simple news magazines, but for something to change a person or change their lives, it has to be memorable. It has to be emphatic. It has to be something that sometimes leaves a scar. Uh, because I think, yes, there are high moments, there are reward moments, there are moments when things are going great. But the most times that people learn is from those moments when things are not going great and when we are disappointed and when life is hard on us.
Certainly. Totally agree with you, Miss Gail. What were some of the most surprising lessons you've learned as a mom?
Oh my. Well, it's taken me a long, long, long time to learn to just accept life on life's terms and not to try to want to change things, including changing people. So I have learned that, but it hasn't been a dramatic one time lesson. It's been over years that I have learned that there is peace and there is power in accepting. And, the serenity prayer where you accept the things you cannot change and have the wisdom to know the difference. That's big. And I think that's the biggest life lesson I may have ever had.
Miss Gail, let's talk about the themes and stories in the book. Can you share a story or moment from the book that was especially meaningful to write?
Oh boy. Oh, there's some great stories in there. Um, One that comes to my mind is when my we were in Russia. We were doing dental work. My husband's a dentist, and we were doing dental work on orphans in Russia. And this was many years ago, and when you could go in and do this sort of thing. And my daughter, I have one daughter, and she's grown, and only thing she really wanted in life was to be a mother, and that wasn't working out at all. I mean, it was not working out at all. And right before we left on that trip, she had had a surgery. They had told her bluntly, "You will not have children." And so that she was going through trauma. She was kind of like post traumatic trauma. And she was acting as a dental assistant with us. But we visited an orphanage there in Vladimir, which is one of the oldest cities on earth. And we went into this building. We were visiting with the little kids and bringing them a few things. And we had supported them in the past. And I had kind of forgotten that. But it's one of those times when those seeds that you plant come back, they grow. Well, she was getting upset by seeing all the babies and the children. So she was going down the hall trying to just escape. Well, let me tell you, this old building had been there for hundreds of years. There were all kinds of hallways. And so she found this little room, and I started looking for her because I was always a little bit concerned at that time about her welfare. And so I found her in this little room, maybe 10 by 10 feet, and she was holding a baby. And I still get chills because when I saw the baby, I got really nervous because I had worked with handicapped children, all kinds of situations, and this baby was not thriving and was not healthy. And she had this look in her eye like, I want this baby. Well, you don't do it that way. You know, you don't go to a foreign country and just find a baby and get that baby. Well, this daughter of mine, she left special food. We knew some of the people there that decided they would go in and rock the baby, take care of her, make sure she was okay. On our way home, she was having her second hernia surgery. She was only about 4 pounds at the time. And we get home, and my daughter spends every hour for the next several months on the phone with social workers, adoption agencies, everything backwards. I will remind you, this is not, everybody told her this is not normal. But the baby is now 22 years old and the most gorgeous young woman studying radiology. I cannot tell you. See, I was scared to death. My turning point was, oh, this can't work. This can't work. This baby's going to be disabled. She can't take this baby because I know my daughter. She can't handle this. And so I was all against that. And it turned out to be the best thing that I can think of happening in my life. That girl, she came home. She was here 4 months later. And there was all kinds of strings and situations because we had donated to that orphanage. So they decided, well, we're just going to make sure she gets this baby. And you don't do that in Russia. And so it was just a really incredible experience for me. I was a learning lesson, that I don't know how everything should turn out. And I'm not the boss of everybody. And so it turned out beautifully. Absolutely perfect. I wish I had a picture I could show you.
Yes, Miss Gail, thank you for that beautiful story. You talk about learning as a part of motherhood journey. What are some lessons that you took you by surprise?
Oh boy. I learned a lot about setting boundaries in life. And I taught that. In fact, I was teaching a class of single moms, and I thought, well, I'd studied boundaries some, and I thought, well, we'll give this topic about 6 weeks. We met once a week, and 2 years later, we were still studying boundaries. So I learned how important it is to respect yourself and to realize that you have choices. You have a choice about what you allow in your life and the people you allow in your life. And even in work situations, which, oh, I wish I had known this years ago, you can set boundaries. I was at a clinic the other day, and the doctor told me that this particular nurse, phlebotomist, said she put her foot down. They wanted her to go to another city once a week or something, and she put her foot down. She said, no, I'm not going to. She's a valuable employee, so she could do that. But I wasn't very good at that when I was younger and when I was working. I thought I had to do everything right and please everybody. And you can't please everybody. And so
Yes.
I learned a lot about boundary setting.
Totally agree with you, Miss Gail. You cannot please everybody. Let's talk about the support and encouragement. How can mothers support each other more, especially in a world that often expects perfection?
Oh boy. Um, I think priorities is the main thing that moms need to realize. And I continue with that even to this day, setting priorities when it comes to being really, really busy, and most of us are, making a decision. Okay, if I've got these two things to do, which thing is going to be my priority? Well, if you set those priorities in advance, you can often make those decisions more easily. Like if I say family first and work second, when a problem comes up about, well, what am I going to do? There's a conflict here. It's going to be family first. And I regret that it's taken me that long to realize that the importance of that. I have learned uh, that that's important. And when I work with single moms, and I am a coach for single moms, I I realize that a lot of them are so overwhelmed, so completely consumed with day to day life. I remember just trying to get the laundry clean and how that was difficult just to have everything clean. And so I think that the thing is that once you set some priorities in your home first and with your children, and let children see you do that, and then you will be more fulfilled. I used to, I had three children, and they were all born in 3 years, so we were real close together. And I would set aside time. We would call them special days. We would put it on the calendar, and just that child and I would go somewhere together. Now, not everybody can do this, but I was fortunate. I had mom around; she could help with the other two children. And sometimes you can do this if you're divorced, and the uh, ex spouse has custody every other weekend. If not, it may be a little bit more difficult, but you try to set aside time specifically for each child so that they develop their own autonomy. And that was one of the things that I stress with moms. Another thing I stress is dinner time. There are statistics now to show that those people who sit down at the table for dinner 2 or 3 times a week, not every night necessarily. Those children have less trouble in school, they take drugs less, they misbehave less, and all kinds of statistics. And yet we don't do that. Remember, the TV dinners came out years ago, and we thought it was okay to just sit in front of the TV and watch TV while we ate, whether we talked to each other or not. That's not good. Every night, my husband and I have a grown grandson with us, and we all three share something that day that we learned, something new that we learned that day. And we're building a rapport. You're building relationship, and you're also teaching children that it's a good thing to sit at a table and eat together. And that's historical. Like I said, there's statistics about it. It's something all of us can do. I had talked to a group one day, and a young single mom said, "You know what? When I go home, I'm going to buy a card table because I don't have a dining table, but I'm going to buy a card table, and my son and I are going to have dinner together every night." So these are the kind of things that I think help balance life. And when disappointments come, it's good to have someone you trust to talk to. Be careful who, but it should be someone you trust. It might be a sibling. Maybe it'll be your mom or dad. Maybe it'll be a minister, but be careful who it is. And then don't be afraid to share and lean on people and get advice from people. Ask for help if you need it. A lot of moms don't want to ask for help. They think that's a weakness. And I think that's sad because we all should be willing to help. And if you find the right people in a right group, whether it's in a church, whether it's in another kind of a group, a support group, or even if it has to be online, it could be online. I prefer in person, but I think single moms need to be encouraged to ask for help.
Miss Gail, what's your advice for new moms who feel overwhelmed or unsure?
Well, we do have, and I have worked with some pretty young moms who um, got pregnant and didn't intend to, and then they're there with a baby, and maybe they don't have support of their family because of they just don't approve or something like that, or that just the dynamics of what they've come out of. And we all know about postpartum depression. Now, that is one thing, that's a medical, clinical issue that needs to be addressed by a doctor. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying that's something you can deal with yourself because it isn't. We've seen it in our own family. Now, the thing that a young mom needs to do realize is that she may not be able to do everything for that baby. She may have to depend on some other people to help her. I wish our organization was nationwide and we could help her, but it's not nationwide yet. But there are organizations all over the country that are there specifically to help single moms, to help women who need assistance. We have a little shop in our church where the moms can come in and get clothes and diapers, but most communities have things like that. Reach out. Do not be embarrassed. Do not be ashamed of the situation. You're a mom now. You have a life in your hands. And I know you may feel overwhelmed. I have all kinds of little neat tips, but I used to get paid once a month. And in that stretch, had to stretch that. Okay. And so I had 3 kids and I wanted to feed them well, but I had to plan a month in advance of what we were going to eat. So I encourage moms to plan, to have plans, to use a calendar, to look at it, to think, okay, this is when we eat this is when we eat that, and not just end up thinking, I don't have anything tonight, let's go order pizza. Or, something like that is what runs the budget down, you know, because you don't think ahead of time. If you plan when you're overwhelmed, if you plan, I promise you things will go easier, even with your budget, with your money, because let's face it, most single moms, 30% of those 10 million single moms live in poverty. Isn't that sad? In this United States of America, 30% live in poverty. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I know other countries there are lots of single mothers living in poverty and really not able to feed their children. And I don't want to get into child support and all that subject because I could go on forever. You know,
Yes.
this is a hot topic for me.
For sure, Miss Gail. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, other podcast of mine, because my abstract essay in its fifth season already, abstract poetry in second season, and book 101 review in its fifth season. Comedy 101 in second season, Food 101 in its fifth season, and Geography 101 in fourth season, as well as my love letters and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, and Movie 101 review in its third season, as well as my Music 101. Please do listen them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Gail, what legacy do you hope to leave your children and your readers through this book?
You can do it. You're capable. It may take small steps, but I hope that you're inspired enough to realize that you have the capacity, one step at a time, one baby step at a time, to reach your goals. And have goals. Have goals. Reasonable.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. But before we move on, Miss Gail, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
Right now, I am finishing this book for Morgan James Publishing, and it's available for pre-order right now, but it'll be available in the stores in September. That is a goal that I didn't know I would ever be able to reach. So that is a big deal for me. And other goals are personal health. I saw you have health food 101.
Yes,
I wish I
mental
would
health
tell my
101.
children more about food. And so I try to instill in my grown children the importance of their diets. So that's one of the legacies I want to leave. I know they're tired of hearing me say it, but or what you eat, you need to be careful. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm real excited about those two things.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Gail Showalter, and thank you so much for sharing your books to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
I would like to invite everyone, go to gailshowalter.com and you can find out all about it. I consider it an honor to have shared with you, and I hope to see you again.
Yes, indeed. Miss Gail, people, let's support Miss Gail Showalter because if you support her, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Gail, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.